We, as a company, are really interested in the intersection between art, storytelling, and technology. So everything that we do is always trying to experiment in some way with technologies, whether they're like kind of cutting edge or whether they're more old-fashioned. Like we're just very interested in kind of how technology can be used to for people to express themselves and for people to kind of tell stories. Something that places the audience at the very centre of the story world or of the artistic world. So I'm really talking about virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, and immersive theatre. However, the other stuff that we kind of work with could involve kind of interactive filmmaking. It could be large-scale kind of outdoor artworks, or it might be kind of social games that either take place on the internet or kind of live in a live festival setting. I guess what's been quite interesting over the past couple of years during the pandemic is that a lot of the sort of work that we did was very dependent on having people present in a space. Like the virtual reality especially was moving towards location-based experiences, and that just means that people had to go to a venue to put on the headset to take part in those experiences rather than like kind of sitting and watching them at home. Like, what do we program a whole virtual reality section at a film festival even though nobody has the headsets and barely anyone's going to see it? So the cool thing that we ended up doing was we created a project called Electric Dreams Online, and we were really interested in exploring new possibilities and new venues for performance within the online world. There was lots of theatre makers, performers who they didn't have any kind of work because they rely so much on one live performance, but also the Fringe, like it's a massive thing. So what we wanted to do was make an online version of the Fringe, and we created a 4-week festival, I think, and it all was about connecting people. And that was super cool because we were supporting artists to move into new spaces or to carry on performing, but we were also connecting people across the world. I think what it really showed us was that we had been so reliant on there being a room full of people pre-pandemic, but we always kind of knew who those people were, especially in a film festival circuit where a lot of immersive, by which I mean VR kind of work, is being shown at the moment. And what the pandemic did was open up festivals and conferences around the world to people that could never travel because sometimes you couldn't get a visa, it would be prohibitively expensive. And so the international kind of connection that came out of the pandemic and those connections that would never have ordinarily happened, that's definitely something that I want to take forward into kind of the post-pandemic world. Yeah, definitely. I mean, you can, whether you put a geo-block on it or not, I mean, that comes down to film rights especially, but interactive and performative things don't tend to have this geo-block kind of this problem. So yes, you could be selling tickets, but it could also be free and open online to everyone. Like I did a panel, oh my God, 5 years ago maybe at South by Southwest about this whole idea of lack of access to industry and to networks and to technology for creators kind of in the global south. And there was supposed to be a creator who was coming in from India. He got the festival invite, like he had his accreditation, he was an official speaker, and he couldn't get a visa to enter the US in order to take part in that panel. It's really important that people from all walks of life can be inspired and take part in kind of art and storytelling, because really that's who it's for. We shouldn't be making things just for other filmmakers or other creatives. I hope so. And I think that the answer isn't things like meta, where we're living in kind of these dystopic kind of visions of reality born out of Silicon Valley kind of white male perspectives. I mean, all of those kind of efforts are going to open it up and make it cheaper, but the problem is then everybody becomes a commodity and everybody becomes the product. And kind of the level of fidelity that you can get on a mobile phone. And you have to remember that for a lot of people, well, for a large portion of the world, they skipped laptops and computers entirely and went straight to mobile. They've been mobile first countries. And so there's a huge market and a huge opportunity for kind of artistic expression and reaching those kind of audiences through people's pockets. I think that there's something nice about VR that means you doesn't have to be experienced as part of a mass audience, but other work really does. Like, there's just as much value in a kind of contemplative sort of documentary where you are given the time and space to experience that in a completely solitary way. Nobody ever complains about how solitary books are, but people seem to be obsessed with it when it comes to VR. I mean, I'm very lucky, like, it's a great job to have. Part of the reason is because I just love being able to support artists to reach audiences and support them getting kind of seen on a circuit as well. I think it's a very important role to have, and it's one that film programmers have had for a very long time. The role, I think, now is part of what we've been talking about, which is that kind of that route to mass audience. And I think it's partly the role of curators of this kind of work who understand its exhibition to start trying to build better distribution models for kind of virtual reality producers and artists and creators. And we need to start getting audiences more prepared to kind of part with money, like a more kind of ticketed experiences, and start creating that kind of model where going out to watch a VR piece is the same as going out and buying a cinema ticket or going out to the cinema. And part of that is really starting to get press interested, and not just press that's going, oh, it's VR, like it's this innovative thing. It's more about to get some actual kind of qualitative reviews, like real reviews, that take the technology kind of out of the equation and really start to think about it from as an artistic medium, and think of it from a kind of audience and storytelling point of view. It's a slow process. I realise I live in a slightly different world to other people, and so I kind of see more of these reviews and things. I think we are beginning to get there. I'd just like to see a lot more of it and a lot less focus on the buzzwords. And the problem is, at the moment, it feels like there's a contentious issue around sort of the enterprise. So like kind of maybe the makers of the headsets or makers of spaces that they're trying to sell a product. Mm-hmm. And then there's the artists who are trying to innovate around that product and find new forms of expression within that product. Yeah, I think creativity definitely drives the innovation rather than the other way around. People just can't wait for the next tool or the next thing to be able to do, and as soon as it lands, everybody's excitedly trying to mess with it. I think it's interesting that even kind of Oculus, before it was even commercial, you had people like Noni de la Peña, who's often cited as the godmother of VR, creating her own headsets in order to tell the stories in the way that she wanted to tell them. There's this kind of idea about sort of story living rather than storytelling, which is this idea that when I put you into a world, it can be down to you to kind of unpick the story by inhabiting that world and by exploring it yourself. It's something that comes from immersive theatre, and kind of an immersive theatre has been doing this and innovating around this for a very long time. This idea that that isn't a part of the set, it's actually a storytelling object, that set of drawers, and you can go through it and you can look through it, and within it you might find elements of the story which put together like this kind of story world and create a story whole, if you like. I sort of fell into it. I was curating, I was producing the interactive at Sheffield programme at Sheffield Dockfest. It was a while ago. And to Noni de la Peña and another guy called Oscar Raby submitted 2 pieces that used virtual reality, and we didn't really know what that was at the time. But then they turned up to the festival, and both of the things ended up being the hit of the festival. But I think my first encounter actually with virtual reality was the year before. It was a project called Door into the Dark by a team called Anagram, who are based in the UK, and it didn't use any virtual reality headsets at all. Like all it asked you to do was you were put in front of a door, and there was a rope there, and they blindfolded you and put on these headphones, and you were told that all you had to do was follow the rope. And while you followed this rope, you were transported into kind of these fantastical worlds just through kind of set design, effectively. So you would be clambering along a rainforest sort of waterfall, and then it would collapse, and suddenly you felt like you were on this giant bed. And you were listening all the time to documentary stories about times that people had found themselves lost. And that is still one of the best virtual reality experiences I've ever done, because it transported you into a completely different story world. It was totally immersive, but it never used a headset. It didn't need any visual cues whatsoever. It was all done through sound and touch, which is brilliant. They're very different things, I think. And maybe 360 video is not even virtual reality. It's its own thing. But then some of my favourite things I've ever seen in a VR headset have been 360 videos. So I think they're all part of an ecosystem. You have a much smaller audience if you're going to be using multi-sensory touch, because you have to build a set. Maybe you need wind machines, you need heat, you need like kind of haptic suits. But then there should also be, in terms of reaching audience, if what you've got to say is important, and you should be thinking about reaching audience, then you need to broaden that out to other different kind of platforms, whether that's 360 video, maybe that's TV, maybe that's just social, like a good social media strategy. Like all of these things are part of a whole, I think. You can plot everything on this kind of, have you seen the innovation kind of adoption curve? Any technology you can plot on this. It's very difficult to describe this without one here. but effectively, I think the curve kind of always has this moment of kind of innovation, rapid innovation and excitement. Then it plateaus into this kind of fog of disillusionment. And then it starts to curve up again as it becomes more standardized, and that's kind of heavy adoption. And then finally you plateau once more, which is it becomes completely adopted by all of society. And so TV is up here, right? And but I think and maybe on that graph, video games are somewhere on the way up after the first plateau. And I think maybe where VR is at the moment is at that very end of the plateau in the fog of disillusionment, because we're still having these kind of conversations. But I think we're about to see it slowly become kind of mass adoption. I mean, I think the web is that now. I think TV has been that and can be that. I think probably even radio before it. It's all about who's pulling the strings, and it's all about ensuring that those spaces still have room and freedom for kind of freedom of expression and freedom of kind of thought and creativity.